A few days ago, I had the opportunity of watching the Michael movie, and I know there's a lot of criticism about the movie. There's a lot of the critics on Rotten Tomatoes that had their own view, but I'm going to share mine. Everyone's free to their own opinion and view. But in my opinion, I think it was one of the best Michael movies, one of the best Jackson movies ever created. A huge, massive shout out to Jafar for his impeccable performance. He made his uncle proud. I'm going to give you some of the details and things that jumped out at me. For those who wanted to see more post Bad Era, Teddy Riley, and all the scandals, you got to understand that stuff happened after this era. This era is from Michael's birth to the Bad Era. And there's only so much one can squeeze into 2 hours. They had 4 hours of footage. They whittled it down to 2 hours. Come on now. Give a dog a bone. Give a round of applause to the team who did all that they could to make the best Michael movie. I think it's a great movie. Let me share some of my ideas and my experiences with you. Before I tell you what I have to say about the Michael movie, let's jam a little. One of my favorites. There are a few films that earn my time twice. Fewer still that manage to hold it all the way through. As someone who has spent years dissecting cinema with a critical lens, I don't hand out praise lightly, and most films reveal their weaknesses very early and many fall apart under scrutiny. But this film, Michael, it didn't. What surprised me wasn't even the story, it was the craft. The visual language of the film is deliberate and textured and confident. The cinematography was solid. I did not see any sense of compromise. And every frame felt considered, almost irreverent, as though the filmmakers understood the weight of the figure they were portraying, Michael Jackson. And that weight is immediately felt. The film didn't hesitate to confront the most uncomfortable truth at its core, the trauma. The relationship with Joe Jackson, it was vivid. It was not compromised at all. It was not softened. It was not stylized into something digestible. It was raw, and it set the emotional foundation within minutes. The young actor portraying Michael delivers something rare, not imitation, but embodiment. That kid definitely studied the younger Michael. Because you don't just see a child performer, you feel the psychological imprint of pressure, of fear, expectation as Joe is looming over the brothers with his belt, just sitting down. And I'd never really considered the emotional trauma Michael went through in his earlier years. But from the movie, it became very vivid and obvious. And from that point, the film made a bold structural choice, one that will divide audiences. But in my view, I feel it was absolutely correct because it compresses the transitional years and it moves decisively toward Off the Wall. Now, people had trouble with that because they were looking for those 4 other solo albums he did on Motown. Well, in my mind, that was relevant to the build-up to Off the Wall. But the decision to cut to Off the Wall matters because before that moment, Michael wasn't yet the cultural singularity we recognize. He was still part of the machinery of the Jackson 5. And if you watch the movie carefully, you still see that commitment, even beyond Off the Wall. Off the Wall was the pivot. It was the moment that his autonomy began. And the film understood that. And when it arrives there, it sharpens its focus. And there's not a whole lot of video that was available from back in the day when Off the Wall came out. It was very limited. But when the movie hits thriller, that's where it really elevates. Honestly, Jafar killed his part pretty well. I was absolutely gobsmacked and amazed at the transitions of the younger Michael to the older Michael and the older Michael through all those eras up to the Bad Era. I feel that the recreations of the thriller era are not just nostalgic, but they are meticulous. And this is why the movie is extremely impactful, not just for the rabid fans, but for any music lover, because the moment it hits off the wall, you immediately recognize your timeline if you were born before that time period. And if you had reached the age of understanding, you are tracking your timeline along with the movie timeline and remembering where exactly you were. Like when I saw Off the Wall, I could remember where I was in 1979, what I was doing, all the mental awareness and those emotions that are not necessarily Michael related alone, but everything surrounding your 1979 or your 1983, 84 through the bad era. All that stuff comes flooding back. And that is why, in my mind, the movie goes beyond just nostalgia. It goes into deep emotional experiences that each viewer is beholding. The staging, the movement, the atmosphere, it's clear that the filmmakers studied not just the performances, but the mythology surrounding them. The reenactment of Billie Jean, reminiscent of the iconic performance tied to Motown 25, Yesterday, Today, Forever, it captures something intangible. The moment an artist transcends into legend. And this is where the film stops being a mere bio and it becomes something closer to cultural documentation. And then there came the Pepsi incident, one that I really hadn't considered to that degree, a moment that's often reduced to trivia, but here we begin to see the truth and the horror of Michael being lit, his hair on fire, and ends up being admitted for a significant amount of time with third-degree burns. But here, in the movie, giving context and consequence, we see it's not just an accident, it's a turning point. And the film smartly connects it to the larger machine of fame, of branding, the physical toll of performance, commitment to family, Joe breathing down his neck, you got to do this for family, the place of Don King in the whole incident, which I had no visibility of before the movie. It brought a lot to light. It's extremely revealing to what exactly happened. And we can see Michael in agony and pain, his relationship with his mom and his relationship with his animals, Bubbles coming on the scene, the giraffe, his llama. It was just so well put together. And by the time we get into the bad era and Michael has fired his dad through fax and he's developed quite a close bond with his bodyguard, his minder. By the time we reach that bad era, the film resists the temptation to over-explain. We just see a performance and it just comes flooding back for those who are in that time period. It doesn't drown itself in the production credits or the industry minutiae, so you won't get deep dives into figures like Quincy Jones, even though Quincy was, in my mind, well documented, being a key person in Michael's success. So Quincy was definitely shown quite a few times, but there's also a notable absence, one that some viewers will undoubtedly critique, and that is the controversies, the allegations, the legal battles that began around 1993. Those are not explored, but that omission isn't an avoidance, it's scope. You see, when you watch the film, you get an idea of the timeline. The film is not trying to be the final word of Michael Jackson's life. There is going to be a part 2, as they showed at the end. The credits said his story. It's the beginning of his story, obviously making reference to the next part in Michael's life adventure. So this first part is capturing a specific arc, the making of a phenomenon. And within that scope, it succeeds, in my mind. What elevates the film beyond the standard musical biopic is its restraint. It doesn't oversaturate itself with spectacle. It allows quiet moments, interaction with family, fleeting connections with fans, glimpses into isolation to breathe. It did tap into when he had his nose job and other things, and we're seeing the personal struggle, the internal struggle that Michael was going through. And these moments ground the legend in something human. So, no, I disagree with those who say it's just a musical. It's a study of transformation. It's a documentation of pressure and of brilliance forged under conditions that would break most people. And whether you admire Michael Jackson or you question him or you think you already understand his story, this film will challenge that assumption. Because what it does at its best is remind you that behind the global icon was a narrative far more complex than headlines ever allowed. And for once, a film had the discipline to focus on the part of the story that built the legend without diluting it and without losing its nerve. So the question is, why are the reviews so negative, especially on Rotten Tomatoes? Because I went to check out Rotten Tomatoes and I was quite shocked at how low the film scored amongst the critics. But on the flip side, the audience was absolutely enthusiastic about the movie. So it got me thinking and doing my research to find out why is this. And honestly, up to when I watched the movie, I was so sure that it was probably not up to par, probably had some cheap imagery or some inaccurate or poor acting or dance moves. But that was not the case. It was a really well put together package of the life of someone going through a lot but rose to the top. So here's the reason. You know, when you take a look at Rotten Tomatoes, the reviews up there, those are generally from people who are looking for elements best known to them, but may not overlap with what you as a viewer or even as a fan may be looking for. Instead, you find yourself absorbing it not from a critical angle, but really just from a, does it entertain? Was it well put together? But even then, the disparity between the viewers, the common watchers, moviegoers, and the so-called critics, in my mind, it's far too wide. And I think there's this baiting looking for the controversy. And the controversy started in 1993. So anyone who's judging the movie based on the lack of the controversy, they miss the boat. They don't understand the timeline. You know, when you look at movies like this, you also need to look at the legal. And even if they wanted to show certain footage or create certain scenes, there were clauses in place that prohibited the team from showing as much as people might have wanted to see. Yes, many people don't understand the timeline. I don't see it as being avoidance. I see it as being proper staging for the right time. And most likely in part 2, we're likely to see more of the controversy. So I'm wondering, if you have watched the movie, what do you think? I think Jafar's performance was world class. That guy, I don't know if he'll ever act outside of the Michael movies, but he nailed that part like no other. I don't think any other person could have done it as well. Like all the lookalikes on social media who would say, well, it should have been me. I disagree. Jafar was the right person to play that. It's like that was part of his life mission, sent to clone his uncle, because I'm telling you, even like with the makeup and everything they did, he was embodying Michael to the core. At times you forget you were watching Jafar. It's pretty sick. So a shout out to Antoine and the entire crew who were involved in this movie. I was pleasantly surprised that it was that good. I did not expect it to be that good. I was somewhat skeptical going in. I didn't think they would be able to pull it off. But yeah, they knew what they were doing. I think they did great. Let me know what you think. Drop me a comment below. Bye for now.